This is aisle 42. In this episode, we're tackling one of the most pressing issues in the grocery industry, food waste and accessibility, with a guest who's making a real impact. Jordan, president and CEO of Flashfood and former head of global marketing at Impossible Foods, joins us to discuss the massive opportunity to rethink how we distribute, consume, and value food. Our conversation explores the surprising ways people are embracing the food rescue movement, how grocery stores are adapting to reduce shrink, and why cultural shifts, like the rise of vintage fashion, might hold the key to changing the way we think about food waste. Okay, let's get into it with Jordan from Flashfood, because the future of food starts now. Jordan, we are perfect strangers here. This is the first time we've met, so I just want to take a moment and say thank you for coming on to the Aisle 42 show. I think we have Esther to thank for making all of this happen, so appreciate her support as well. To kick things off, I'm going to dive right into the deep end with our big question of season 2, and that is this. Looking ahead to the future, what's one change in the food system that would excite you the most?
I mean, candidly, it's what I'm working on. And I know we'll get into it today, but I think that there is a massive opportunity to radically change our, whether it's supply systems, our end of life systems, to make sure that all of what we produce gets in the hands of folks. I would even argue before we start jamming more into the system, which is, I think we were going to touch a little bit on some of the things around plant based and all of these great innovations and all of that. But the biggest opportunity is how we fix this.
Yeah, and like food security is one of these topics that comes up a lot, and a lot of people, they feel like maybe food security is the inability to access food, but in a lot of cases, it's really the inability to access nutritious food affordably. So when you talk about sort of that end stage of the food system, which is the space that you guys work in, it does feel like a daunting task, but one that we need to address quickly.
It's really interesting. So historically, we've always looked at, food access or food insecurity based on caloric value. There's no qualifier on that on whether or not you ate, a piece of broccoli all the way through to a can of whatever on the shelf or ramen. It's always been calorie based. Did the person get the calories? Did they get the calories? There's no considerations for the level of freshness, sort of the freshness meaning like, was it center aisle versus produce versus meat? And what's really interesting and what, in my time in the food system, whether it was founding my own CPG or working at Impossible, it what always killed me was that there's always the hype cycle around the novel foods, the next new thing. And seemingly, for whatever reason, we continue to throw away 40% of what shows up in any grocery store, with the large fraction of that. And I don't have the perfect numbers, but the imperfect number I'll always say is it has to be at least 70% of that being the things that are fresh, your meats, your produces, your dairy, things that tend to have sort of a more fragile shelf life. And a lot of the reason why we find ourselves in that situation is most grocery stores are beholden to these merchandising expectations. You want big, bountiful, beautiful shelves. You want perfect looking produce. You don't want anything to feel like it's empty and sort of that like chaotic, volatile feeling that this whole world experienced during the pandemic. And in that creates this issue, the sort of desire for optics and all of that creates the issue of having to always have more, having it to always be a certain way. And so by and large, we throw away most of what folks would want to have center plate. And like again, I will say it like it's to me, it's truly unacceptable that we continue to fund and fuel more when we have yet to solve the practical reality of all of this amazing stuff that we produce isn't sold, leveraged, consumed to 100% of its availability.
Jordan, for those that might not be familiar with Flash Food, can you give listeners like the snapshot on what you guys are doing? What have you made to help address food insecurity and food waste?
So Flashfood is it's a marketplace. Anyone can download the app for free, and essentially As soon as you open up the app, you'll see a number of grocery stores in any area that's selling food that's pretty close to its Best Buy at super insane deals. And as simple as that, you can shop it and go and pick it up at your store. Majority of that food that you're finding on the platform is food that's like nearing its what I would call the Goldilocks window. It's the perfectly ready to eat, perfectly priced window that exists. And it's as simple as that. And you'll find, I mean, I'm sure, assuming a lot of your listeners are within Canada. We're pretty much everywhere in Canada with Loblaw, and we're in a number of places across the United States with more coming.
Yeah. In my area, I'm just south of Vancouver. There's just one a real Canadian superstore that uses the app. So I'm in a bit of a flash food kind of quiet zone or emerging zone. Why don't we call it that? But it's great to see. In fact, I was just showing my wife the app this morning. We were talking about it again, and I said, "Oh, look, this is what's available right now. $2 for something that would normally be $10." And I spend a lot of time and energy thinking and talking about expiry dates and issues around expiration. And, for the most part, there's a lot of product that just because the sticker says a certain date, I like your Goldilocks reference, by the way, it's wonderful. The food is perfectly safe. And it is really a great way for people to, save money on their groceries without there being, that big sticker price and without it being an unsafe choice for them. So it's really remarkable.
Yeah, and it's not just like, you say like there's sort of obviously there's the multiplier effect of savings, right? If all of us could save a few $100 a month on groceries, it's pretty incredible what we can do with a couple $100 saved on groceries. But it's also what we've seen. It's a tool for experimentation and trial. So we get a lot of folks like when you take the price equation out of it, folks are more willing to try, a dragon fruit for the first time. Or we have a joke here. You get the opportunity to be the berry parent. I don't know if you have kids, toddlers, they love really expensive produce. And oftentimes you get into these situations where like they love that expensive produce last week and then they didn't love it the next week. And then you're sort of saddled with, more blackberries than you would have liked to have ever invested in. And there's a world too where you get this sort of experimentation trial and it has a little bit less of the sort of the de-risk is taken out of it in terms of sort of your weekly grocery shop budget, which is pretty cool. And we also get, I mean, the hobby people are on the platform in terms of like we get people who are incredible canners. They've got whole pantries running in their cellars where they're getting mass volumes from the platform that they're canning, they're freezing, they're kind of playing like their own at home, what is that, like Iron Chef
Yeah.
sort of moment where they get a box of stuff and they're just experimenting. There's so much, I think there's so much fun that goes into what happens when you sort of approach the world of food not in this like almost perfect way that we've been trained to. And there's a lot more play and experimentation that has like a multiplier benefit in terms of like what you can, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to do grocery shopping or do you want to like go do some fun like family adventure like going out to dinner or having like a movie night or what have you? Like there's a lot of ways to use that money for entertainment as well. So
I love it. So here's when I discovered that you were formerly the head of global marketing at Impossible Foods. that certainly piqued my interest. What a brand, what a ride that would have been for you. What were some of the things? What were some of the insights that you brought with you from Impossible to what you're doing now at Flash Food?
the biggest thing with Impossible, and it's the work that the team is also bringing to Flash Food, is how do you find like where is the wind within a movement? In the early days of Impossible, the mass perception around food that was made from plants was historically, in the frozen section, there was like this sort of ratty and tattered like plant-based section in a grocery store, which like and the brands were very green and the assumptions that it was going to be like very cardboardy. And so everything was working against us in terms of consumer perception. There also wasn't a tremendous amount of awareness around sort of the impact of global meat production at the time, so you couldn't really galvanize that. We had to really explore what the winds were, wind meaning like tailwind in culture, what was happening at that point in time that really had nothing to do with plant-based meat, but had everything to do with stoking a movement or a spark. And that was a lot of how we led the initial strategy, which sort of pushed the business to not think about, okay, now let's just go out and acquire a bunch of vegans who are already sort of on the side, like of plant-based consumption. Let's actually go out and think about how we stoke the curiosity of meat eaters. How do we also play to some of the constraints where we didn't have a ton of supply at the time and we needed to find places that sort of not only created that virality, but also built on the credibility, played into the tailwind. And some of the biggest trends we were seeing in the market were, Netflix for the first time was releasing chef shows sort of after the wake of Anthony Bourdain, but he was Food Network specific. There wasn't this like democratized way that food influencers were rising, and you were seeing them rise on social media. You were seeing Netflix get deals from social media chefs. Chefs had effectively become the net new rock star. And it's funny when you look at it now and everyone's like, we need to do the chef strategy. We weren't looking at it like, oh, we need to do the chef strategy. We were like, who are the people that need to stoke credibility, who have the most credibility, who are shaping culture? And at that moment, it was chefs. It could have been someone totally different, but at that moment, it happened to be chefs. And a lot of chefs had historically had really, really outwardly negative opinions about meat, or not meat, plant-based meat, right? Like they were big meat eaters. So we were like, let's just go for the meat jugular, or find the most interesting people who are driving culture, hopefully get them on our side to tell our story. And then we're going to sit a bunch of consumers in their restaurants, hold them captive for essentially 45 minutes where they have to have a meal around this like net new experience and see what they put on social media about it. Like that was the strategy in and of itself. There wasn't a ton of like, there wasn't this like crazy top down ad campaign where we had to like spend billions of dollars on a Super Bowl. It was truly like bottoms up, let the thought leaders and community drive the story. And I think for Flash Food, we've got the things that excited me the most about when I came to join the journey, prior to this was on the board for a second, was there is a community around it, and there are some interesting things happening in culture around how Gen Z, for example, sees vintage fashion. It is very odd that brands like Chico's and Brighton are very popular again, but that's very interesting when you think about how consumers think about the sort of end of life relationship and what that means. And while everyone is sort of capitalized on the celebrity chefs, there are more interesting people coming up, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in, call it like even like sort of like comedy producers online that aren't just like people thinking of, like they think about a lot of things in a sort of multifaceted way. So I think we've got a lot of opportunity in this sort of budding cultural moment and shift around, call it waste, that we've never seen before.
Yeah, and that kind of, I mean, you kind of ran right into my next question, which is great, and wondering how you can, like, how is your team inspiring Flash Food users to take the issue of food waste and food insecurity seriously, but you can't educate and market at the same time very easily. You kind of have to, often you have to pick one or the other. What do you guys feel like is the best way for you to get people really excited about turning to the app to affect their shopping habits?
We've been exploring how we figure this out. I think more recently we've had a couple of, I would say, viral moments, whether it was on social media, and there's been a couple on our comms front as well that have just really played into the sort of like, call it topsy turvy levity of food. We look at food in a very different and unique way to folks. We've also got to retrain people to sort of think about their buying experience in a completely net new way. Like I have to consider flash food. I should consider flash food before I walk into like my regular grocery shop just to see if there's something there. So we take that lightheartedness and a lot of the content that we've put out. We recently had this one where instead of storing the eggs in their sort of usual cartons, what if you just like duct tape them to the top of your fridge and had them hanging down? That went really viral, but it was more so emblematic of like how do you get under, and people want to see that content. It just goes back to entertainment. A lot of folks call it like edutainment. You don't want to be educated. You want to just be like, people are actually pretty smart. And I think a lot of times we often forget that people are really smart. And a lot of them are hyper consumers of media now online, almost everyone, inclusive of like even my parents. Like, I think my dad is probably on social media more than I am. I just learned the other day that he has like a Pinterest. He's all over Facebook, but he's got a Pinterest board and he had like a ghost Instagram account that he was posting to for just like pictures of guitars he liked. And I'm like, okay, so you're like a multi-channel media user. And he's like, yeah, and I also like the ads I get on Instagram. And I'm like, okay, you're in it. And I think we forget that folks are doing that. So the way at which you have to play and reflect and like pique curiosity is completely different. And then, I think on the narrative, like when we've had viral comms moments, realistically, groceries they are the most expensive they've ever been that all of us have seen in our living lives, and even that of like my dad, right? Like this is crazy. A lot of people didn't plan for this to happen for their retirements. Some folks who are looking at making some meaningful trade-offs. And so we do still have a lot of content about this core value proposition, which is the sort of the bounty you get and the savings that you have. And it's really high quality food. I think that's what oftentimes the perception and the narrative that's always been out there is like, this is a scratch and dent experience when you're going to get food like this. And truly, the food you're getting is like, I mean, last night I just took 2 packs of incredible grass fed beef that I got from Lucky, our partner here in California. I had a crazy produce box that had like potatoes, peppers, and all this stuff in it. And I just like chilied it. And like, that is like, someone would sell that chili at a restaurant for a lot of money with everything in it, and it probably, like, in the whole cost me, I don't know, $10, and we're gonna have it for the next few weeks, and I had a good time. I watched, I had my show going, I was, like, playing my Iron Chef, but yeah.
That's awesome. I think one of the challenges might be some of the photographs that, because someone in the store is taking a picture of the
Yeah,
item usually, right? So some of them is like, turn the light on, like give us a chance to like actually see what you're photographing or
we're working on that. A lot of there are some exciting updates happening on our tech front that will make those images, albeit a bit clearer, a bit more, either drawing from the sort of realistic catalog that exists. And so that's probably one of our number one pieces of feedback we get, which is just for us, it's just a part of the tech that we're going to be improving because folks want to be able to see it a bit better. And there's a lot of ways that we'll do that, and you'll see that in the next few months. The shift will come. Yeah.
yeah, that makes total sense. I get that. The Flash Food it's across North America. How many stores are using Flash Food to broadcast the deals right now?
Right now, I don't have the exact number, but it's over, I would say over 2,000 on any given day, probably getting a bit closer to 2,500 in the pockets you'll find us in. We've got, obviously, I'm here in San Francisco. We've got a presence out here in NorCal. We've got a, strong presence on the East Coast. I would say sort of tri-state area between Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, all the way up to Massachusetts. And we've got a pretty solid footprint right there kind of in that part of the states coming out of Toronto, and then we're all across Canada with Loblaw, and there's a lot more growth happening this year, so you're gonna start to find Flash Food in more and more places. We've got about a location in most states now, save some of the ones further out in the ocean or in other areas, but I anticipate that being sort of fully saturated by end of year.
That's very exciting. I can't help but take stock of the fact that my iPhone, has a lot of shopping apps. I've got my family. We use the Yucca app. My
I've
daughter,
never
when
heard
she
of that
walks,
one.
Yucca. Oh my gosh, you got to check it out. Yucca is I don't know. I kind of call it a traffic light type system where it gives you scan a barcode and it'll tell you if it's healthy for you or safe for you. So
Hmm.
one of the best in the grocery store, it's quite good. It's really good for things like cosmetics. Like my daughter will walk into Sephora and she'll be like, "Dad, give me your phone." she'll open up the Yucca app and she'll be like, oh, that got a red light. I'm not going to buy that. Or that got a green light. Or if it's a yellow traffic light, she'll be like, oh, dad, I really want it, but it's a yellow light. Anyway, so, between apps like that, and of course, a lot of the grocery stores have their own rewards and loyalty programs where, I pull up my reward card and show my phone to the checkout girl. I am an Instacart user. I placed over 50 orders on Instacart last year, and I realized that's not me going into the store, but
Mhm.
someone's going into the store on my behalf. So, more and more consumers are using their phones, and a lot of people walk up and down aisles with their phones. They're checking their shopping list, they're
Yeah.
scanning a QR code, they're looking up a brand, they're looking at recipes, right? They're looking at their next
Mhm.
chili recipe. Does this do I have what I need? And it is a lot more of an immersive experience. So the fact that you guys are leaning into technology to facilitate some of the stuff is and to address food waste is remarkable. Is there, you mentioned some of the innovations coming down the line. Are there things like artificial intelligence or other sort of, the dark wizardry of the web that's coming into the app? I know you might not be able to answer that question actually.
We've been looking at a number of ways to integrate, I would say, the early stages of AI into the process to make things like the images stronger, the information that you can see and read around, what's getting published on the platform to be much sharper. Those are things that are definitely within the near horizon, as well as how can we, create better merchandising opportunities where you've probably seen the produce boxes. What would that potentially look like in prepared foods from the hot bar or bakery? So those are things that you will see from us this year, as well as, I would say, a number of features that sharpen our search and ability to scan and browse, to all your points around how we see consumers leveraging technology to prepare, to know the recipe, to complete the cart. We're, I would say, as a business, at a point where we're really, really leaning into our tech as a whole to, deliver value. We've got millions of people that engage with Flashfood, and hopefully millions more as we go this year. And I think we're really excited to make it a transformative year in terms of us as a tech partner, not only to our shoppers but to our retailers, because we are one of the, I would say, only ones that's in the grocery store doing what we do.
Well, let's talk about those retailers for a second. How do you go into these retailers and say, "Hey, we've got the solution for you. Guess what? We're going to give your team something else to do." But what's it like building and nurturing those relationships with retailers?
We're unique in that, oftentimes most people think about grocery in that sort of the more transactional state between some of the consumer product goods to that of like getting on shelf. We're unique in that we come in as a solution provider that does have some form of visibility within a store, and it's comparable to that of Instacart, but we don't have our own sort of task or labor force. So we work with the grocer to do it. And the biggest value that we've always seen for our grocers not only is like the tooling to reach their sustainability goals or their food waste goals, and frankly the business goals, because no one likes to see the cost of shrinking out food is very expensive. It's not just the everything that went into shipping and getting it to your store, it living on your store and all the energy that goes into your store, the people that are watching over it, but also the cost of like throwing something away. Like there's so much cost that goes around waste. So for us to be able to leverage the value proposition of us having shoppers that are ready to sort of take that on for them is a pretty solid talking point, I would say. We also, what we've seen is someone who shops on Flash Food, because we deal in the realm of ephemerality and the physical world. Folks who shop with us will come into a grocery store on net 1.1 more times a month than their average shopper, which when you're looking at it in terms of, an investment in the marketing or how do we drive foot traffic, we in many ways are that tool. So it's interesting to take something that is sort of typically swept out under the rug and what have you, and it becomes a driver that is as effective as certain campaigns you can run in the store is a really powerful place to be. And it's actually quite a fun place to be because there's, you know, for myself and my career, whether it was in marketing or scaling up these companies, when you've kind of got that win-win-win, it's a fun side of the equation to be on.
It sounds like it. It does sound like fun. And I was just actually thinking When you're talking about your chili experience, so many of us, cooking at home, we're looking at recipes and we think of like, oh, there's 9 things I don't have. So going, either adding that to the list or, running up to the grocery store. What if there were flash food boxes where maybe half the ingredients in there are, close to expiration, but the grocery store could put all the other stuff in there because a lot of people buy these meal kits that
Yeah.
come with all the prepared, or semi-prepared stuff or little pouches and little containers. And to be honest, that stuff stressed me right out. I love the idea of it. It's just not for me. I'm not the target for that. But Flash Food could make my next chili recipe a lot easier if they just had it ready at the door. I just drive by, they could throw it in, go.
Yeah. What's cool about it is there's like an insane amount of opportunity to keep growing and building. And that's like, you and I could sit here and have like a crazy open brainstorm. And to me, that always shows the viability of something. If you can, you're like, in my day, I'm looking at like, how many things can I make sure that we focus in on? But what excites me about my day is that there's a vast amount of opportunity that exists with what you can do with a tool like that. And I love the idea. And I think we'll name it Corwin's boxes when we do it, and I'll have to like credit you back on the idea from many moons ago. But it's you're totally right. I am on the side of it though. I'm like a chaos cook in that I get really excited about just seeing how far I can go without having exactly everything I need, which in many ways pushes me to make like a lot of interesting sauces or complements to dishes, which is a great way to leverage food waste, by the way. It's funny because we all think like sauces like chimichurris have to be the exact prescriptive parsley, cilantro, and it actually doesn't. Like herb sauces are an awesome way. You can turn anything into a sauce. Like throw a pepper in the blender and like see what you make with a bit of like herbs and like you should just go nuts. And that I think we often forget there's some people aren't as bold in that, like you want it to be exactly what it is. But there is a world where like people can I hope that people in working and learning more about flash food get a little less afraid of like try things. And sometimes it's really good. Like my chaos chili, it has everything in it, by the way. Like it has potatoes. I poured we had a leftover Pacifico from a party. I put that in there. I was having a, like your sort of end of evening glass of wine. I didn't want to finish it. So I dumped that in there. And like, I was like, cool. I've got my sort of like fatty, rich. I don't know. There's a bunch of random stuff, and it's got everything under the sun. It's like my son didn't finish his peas. Poured that in there last night, and like I tried it this morning, and I was like, this is delicious. Like this has everything we need. You have kids, like the unfinished plate is like a
Oh
real.
yeah. It just, I usually have to wait. I need my family not to see me do it, but the leftover food on the plate definitely ends up either in a casserole or in a container to get used again. They don't need to know that someone 10 minutes ago just slobbered all over it.
They don't know, and
They've
I'm like,
forgotten.
heat.
Heat and a
It's
little bit of
gone.
Parmesan cheese, and we're off to the races. Yeah.
Nobody knew. Just nobody knew. Little cheese will do wonders.
Well, my final question is a fun one for you. And that is, if there was one celebrity that if they would just spontaneously endorse flash food, which celebrity would that be?
Cardi B. Cardi B and a lot of my team knows, I'm sure Esther is who's also listening. Cardi B is I would say one of the most interesting food influencers of our time, going back to like influencers of food in unique spaces. She constantly is cooking recipes, like shopping herself and cooking recipes from the ones that she grew up with. She also really cares about human beings having access, having a good planet, healthy food. But she's also like, if you've ever watched her content, she's like a total chaos cook. She's like, she's got some hot dogs over here. She's making a casserole. She's like figuring it out. And I just think that's like, she's such an incredible individual with a really cool perspective on food. Like, why wouldn't we have her say, why are we all not flash fooding?
I love it. All right. We'll find some way to get her attention. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
I've been saying it for years. I'm like, she's one of the greatest food influencers of our time. And everyone's like, what in the world? Actually, you're kind of right.
So good. Jordan, thank you for the time. Thank you for all that you and your team do to address food waste and to help address food insecurity for those that need it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Aisle 42. Be sure to download the Flashfood app to your phone and search your local stores for fresh food that needs a home. Okay, that's it for me. I'm Corbin Hebert from Ethical Food Group, and I'll see you in the future.